and welcome to the Skyvan. We're located in Ivalo, which is the most northerly airport in the whole of the European Union, located in northern Finland. So, what are we going to be looking at in today's video? First of all, we're going to take a look at the history of the Short Brothers company, normally shortened to Shorts, and then we're going to be taking a look at the history of the Skyvan itself. Then we're going to be jumping into the sim to take a look at the exterior and interior details of the Skyvan, and then taking it for a short flight, showing off some of its unique characteristics, and then checking out all the different variants and versions that are available in the sim. So let's start with the history of the Shorts company. Short Brothers started their business in 1897 with balloons, actually. They actually saw the Wright Flyer, so the Wright Brothers aircraft, fly, and they knew the future of aviation was aircraft. They were the first company in the world to produce a production aircraft. So someone ordered it, they delivered it. They didn't just build it for themselves. They're known for making flying boats, such as the Short Sunderland, and this was mainly in the 30s, 40s, and somewhat into the 50s, but that was their earlier period of aircraft production. During World War II, they mainly produced some more land-based aircraft and also still some seaplanes, and post-World War II, they really got into some interesting concepts. With some jet aircraft, some vertical takeoff and landing concept aircraft, and some sort of strange naval-based aircraft as well. A massive variation in what Shorts have built over the years. Continuing on now into the 60s, and that's where the Skyvan comes in. They produced the SC.7 Skyvan, which we're going to talk about its specific history in just a moment. The Shorts company was owned by primarily the government up until 1989, where it was bought by Bombardier, the same people who brought you the CRJ and the Dash 8. In 2007, it was sold to Spirit Aerosystems, which is a subsidiary of the Boeing company. Now, let's take a look at the history specifically on the Skyvan. Its first flight was in January 1963. It was produced from 1963 until 1986, and the clue is in the name for what it was mainly used for. It is effectively a big box van that can fly around. So it was used for carrying cargo, skydiving, very popular for that, passenger transportation, surveying, some military usage as well. So it really had a wide, varied usage. But it's its box shape that made it really popular with cargo and just fitting things in, and gave it its unique sort of look, because it looks really, really quite like nothing else. Aiding this slightly unusual look is the Garrett TPE 331 engines. Now they're quite small for turboprop engines. They are the same ones that were used on the MU2. They produce around 715 shaft horsepower, which for a turboprop isn't massive, but is also more than enough for the Skyvan. 149 Skyvans were made over the production cycle. There was such a thing as the Skyvan 1, Skyvan 2, Skyvan 3. This is the Skyvan 3, which is by far the most popular variant with the turboprop engines. And what is its unique characteristics in terms of flying? Well, it really can take off in an incredibly short space of time, and it can descend even quicker than that. Famously being able to drop skydivers off and then being able to dive down quicker than they can actually land back on the ground. So as you've opened your parachute, land back at the airport, the aircraft's there, ready, waiting for you. And we'll show you that off in the sim later. So let's jump into the sim, take a look at the aircraft with some of the exterior and interior details. Alright, so where do we really start with looking at exterior? I think first of all, just appreciation of the level of detail on the model. When I move closer to it, we really have tried to capture all these little fine details across the whole aircraft, with rivets and everything being decaled. So if I get very close to this latch here, you can see that there's really no loss of quality no matter how close you get to the aircraft. And we can start to see why it's called the Skyvan. It's just an enormous box that can fly around, and it can't be mistaken for anything else. So if we just go a little bit higher here, take a look at how wide the aircraft is for the size of wing. So it's a completely straight wing, of course, it doesn't need to be high speed, and it goes really giving this almost like a cartoon, like a plane that a child would draw. Here it is in real life, and that's what really makes it great. Let's move back closer to the wing again, taking a look at some more of these details. We've got the leading edge here, which has got a lot of little details. Even if we go as close as to seeing the little nav lights, they're all there as well. These are those Garrett TP331 engines. Like I say, quite small looking, but they get the job done, along with the constant speed props. Brakes wise and wheels wise, we've got some fairings around here. Of course, a fixed undercarriage on this aircraft. Let's just put it this way, minimizing drag is not really the purpose of this aircraft. Actually, it does have a hydraulic system, which is rather unusual for an aircraft of this size. So we have a hydraulic nose wheel, and other systems in the aircraft are hydraulically powered, which is nice. So it gives it sort of more of a easy to handle aircraft, you know. Moving across the roof here, we've got the flaps, which run pretty much the whole length of the trailing edge of the wing. Another very unique sort of trait for this aircraft is the twin tail. So as we're seeing here, we've got the twin tails going straight across the back. Kind of reminds me of a constellation of some sort. And this is done just so, if you can imagine, if I line up here, it's not really getting interference from the engine. So that's blowing over the back, but not interfering with the fins entirely. We've got the rear cargo door here, which can be opened up from inside using the EFB, and you'll be able to see that from the inside and the out opening up. But just to give you an idea of the details, you've got, see a little plaque here. We can move right up close to it, and bingo, we can see that it's a short van and the serial number and all the other details across the aircraft. On the other side, it's pretty much the same, just obviously mirrored. If it wasn't, I'd be a bit worried. Apart from the fact that we've got a rear passenger door on this side, and we have a door to the left and to the right of the cockpit to be able to get in. Quite a wide, spacious cockpit that we will take a look at in a moment. Have the counterbalance weights here, they're quite prominent. Like I say, drag reduction is not the aim of the game on this aircraft. It's simply a utilitarian van to get from somewhere to somewhere else, or to carry something from somewhere else in a remote location. So let's jump onto the interior of the passenger variant and take a look at the cabin. Here we are at the rear of the passenger cabin now. As you can see, pretty spacious. You know, we've got a lot of headroom at the top here. We've also got a pretty good configuration of 2 and 1 on each side, with a pretty good amount of leg room, because this sort of large box shaped construction gives a nice amount of cabin space. A lot of some extra details that are in the cabin here. We can actually open up the overhead lockers to take a look at all the bags that are loaded in. This of course works on both sides. If we just move down the cabin as we would, you can see there's lots of nice little details, like fabrics on the seats, real no loss of quality no matter how close you get. And which is rather unusual for obviously a passenger aircraft, there is no door between the cockpit and the cargo / passenger cabin. They're not needed in this size of aircraft. So if you were sitting in the front row, this is about the view you would get of your pilots flying away, and they're actually slightly elevated with the step that you can see up here. So let's move up into the cockpit and take a look at that. Alright, let's take a look at the cockpit. As you can see, pretty wide, quite a lot of space in here, given the sort of boxy construction of the aircraft. Plenty of seat for the pilot and the co-pilot. Moving on from the left side, we've got the bleed controls down to the left, and then we've got parking brake and the hydraulic systems. As mentioned, it's rather unusual for an aircraft of this side to actually have a hydraulic system. Most would be manual, but that's a nice feature. Anti-ice services and a few others as well. Here we have the iPad. Now the iPad is your interface into the aircraft in terms of changing a few options. So if we go onto the home page, we've just got the METAR searches, and here we can open and close all of the different doors, close all at once, and adjust the bay lighting control. The map is just a VFR map, which allows us to look round, and on the options we have a classic cockpit, no and yes. Now what does this do? We can see here we've got the Garmin unit installed, which is controlling the radios and a few other functions as well. If we say yes, we do want the classic cockpit, the Garmin is removed and we're given back the classic avionics that the aircraft would have shipped with pretty close to its original date, and some will be flying around the world, but you have an option for that. I'm going to go with no at the moment and stick to this. Moving close to the panel, you can see there's really nice effect here with sort of paint brushes and paint strokes, because a lot of these panels have been hand painted over the times and all over the years. A lot of wear on these gauges as well, because it's a pretty old aircraft now. All these aircraft are, oof, you know, the most modern is from 1980s, which so it's not really a new aircraft anymore. Over here we have a nice little quirk of the Skyvan. Here is where your exhaust gas temperatures, they call it exhaust gas EGT, so EGT temperature is shown here and here. Now what you can do is you can actually change the outside air temperature on the wheel, and it will tell you what the takeoff is. So for example, here we go. So 14 degrees Celsius, our takeoff is this limit, the cruise is that limit. Rather than having to flick through a big table, you just use a little wheel. Simple, elegant, and actually very easy to use. Center here, we have a pedestal that's sort of, you could look at it as like an enunciation light from the Boeing, saying what's wrong, what's right, if it's on, if it's off, it's red, different colors like this. So it's actually nice to have that because it gives you a little bit of in-ground what is the aircraft configured like. Up on the overhead, there is a lot of information actually written down with limitations. You can see limitations for starting, airspeed limitations. So if you're ever not sure, simply have a look at the overhead. It's all written in there as well. But you don't actually have to if you don't want to. You can simply go onto the checklist functionality, and all of these checklists come from the real-world manuals, and they are all pretty extensive and actually all integrated into the sim with the autocomplete function fully working as well, or the evaluation function. So it's up to you if you want to use that or just follow the real-world procedures as well, because they're both the same. Here you can see we have the electrical control, engine start controls. We're not going to be going through how to start the aircraft because that's what those checklists are for today. On the left hand side here, the right hand side, I've hidden the yoke or control wheel, whichever you want to call it, so we can actually have a little bit of a look at these rudder pedals. They're really nice, sort of mechanical design, and you can see them nicely animating, and if I brake, you can see them moving the toe brakes as well. Central here is the pedestal with a basic autopilot, so it's not the most sophisticated autopilot in the world, but it is in the real aircraft, and that's what's been simulated. And we have the flap control, which is on the left, prop control, so sort of like the condition lever, and then on the right hand side we have the propeller control, so we have it in closed, start, taxi, and then minimum cruise, takeoff and landing. So pretty conventional for a turboprop aircraft. That's a quick overview of the cockpit, and what we're going to do now is we are going to do a quick takeoff, just showing you, how quickly it can get airborne, descent down, showing you how rapid that descent can be, and then taking a look at the other variants that are available in this Skyvan package. Okay, so you join us in the skydiving version of the Skyvan today. As you can see, we've got our passengers ready to go. They actually are animated and start to talk when you're in the rear of the aircraft, so you can actually hear them having a conversation. So they're about to jump out of an aircraft willingly, not something you'll find myself doing. So let's move back up to the front of the cockpit and discuss a little bit about the flight model. So the flight model of the Skyvan, it's uses the CFD technology and the modern propeller system. So let's talk a little bit about that. So if I release the parking brake now like this, can you see how the aircraft really wants to go? We really are already picking up speed. I'm not touching it at all, so I'm just going to put the brakes back on and come to a stop and reset the parking brake. Now if I now set the propeller control back down to taxi, you can actually hear the engines change their tone. Come back up here, release the parking brake, and you can see it's a lot more natural, and you're going to need to sort of occasionally blip it into reverse thrust or apply a little bit of brakes to try and bring the speed back down. But today we're not going to be doing that, so let's apply the parking brake back again, and let's make sure that we move these all the way back up again, and we are fully ready to go. So what we're going to be doing is doing a short field takeoff. Of course we haven't got a short runway, but that's for demonstration purposes, and then we're going to be climbing up really super steep, and then we are going to be coming back for a rapid descent. So, ready? Parking brakes off. Progressively apply full power. Airspeed's alive. 40 knots. $60 knots. 70 knots. 80 knots. So let's rotate off. There we go, climbing away now. We can pitch up to around about 85 knots. A little bit of trim. And there we go. Climbing at 2,000 feet per minute. A little bit too much. Let's bring the nose back down again. There you go, 60, 70 knots. And it just climbs, well, like a lift, basically. It's the perfect thing for the job. You can see our temperatures are looking good, 500 degrees Celsius, that's below that takeoff limit. And we can just start to roll to the left. Holding around 80 knots now. Let's trim it a little bit more up. And we are good to go. And as you can see, look how steep we're climbing away from the airfield behind us. It's absolutely crazy. Alright, so here we are in the cruise getting ready to do our parachute drop. So we've actually got the autopilot engaged. We put this on by clicking engage, alt mode, and we've also got a vertical speed mode and some other basic modes as well, but it works nice to hold us here. So we're going to be reducing the speed back to about below 120 knots, so let's bring the power back a little bit more. And we've already preset the propellers for 90% RPM because that's what we'll be using in the descent. So to get ready for the jump, what we can do is open the cargo ramp up here. And now the cargo door should be opening. Let's take a look now. Yeah, it's all open and good to go. And now what we can do, which is pretty cool, I'm going to explain it before I press it, we can put the jump light on. Now when we put the jump light on, we will hear a countdown timer for them to jump. Then we'll see a little light at the rear go from amber, so it will go red, amber, and then green when they're good to jump. They're not going to jump out of the aircraft, but it's sort of simulating the jump, and then we're going to do an immediate rapid return back. So let's put the jump light on now. So you can start to hear the countdown. Here's the light at the rear. And there's the jump. So now we would be jumping straight down. As we can see, look, there's the airfield below us. So now all the jumpers will be going out, 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 out. Okay, we've just imagined that they've all jumped out, so now we're going to try and race them back down to the ground in this aircraft from this height down to the airfield you've seen below. So door closed, jump light off. Okay, that looks good. We're going to take the autopilot out. We told you we got 90% RPM. So now what we're going to do is push the nose down, bring the power back to flight idle, and keep pushing the nose down, keep pushing the nose down. Look at that descent rate, look at that pitch, minus 25, 30 degrees pitch. Holding it there, a little bit more trim forward. Speed's increasing slightly. Up to around 160 knots, which is fine. 160 knots now, and we've got around 5,000-6,000 foot per minute descent rate. Look at that out the window. We are just falling. Well, we're falling faster than a human can fall on a parachute, open the parachute and then land. So what we're going to do is go straight, and then we're going to do a teardrop and land back on ourselves. So now I'm going to start to do a 180 degree turn. So back onto heading 030 roughly. .70 knots is about the maximum that you want to do in this sort of configuration. Look at the altimeter, it's moving like it's like you're winding a clock. Okay, I'm going to slightly start to back off. There we go. Okay, I'm going to slightly start to back off on the descent rate now. So I want to try and bleed some of this speed off, while also trying to keep visual with the runway. 140 now. Till I'm visual, I'm not really going to do much more. I'm going to trim up a little bit. Let's take a look. Where is the airfield? There it is to the left. Okay, that's looking good. There's the approach lights. Add a bit of power back in. As you can see, we've made it not just easily, we've made it like no problem at all, you know, in terms of descent profile. So now I'm going to hold the heading around about here. That looks good. Now, of course, we do have flaps, but realistically, you can see you don't really need them to slow down. But I am going to use flaps, of course, for landing. So let's bring the trim back a little bit more forward. Hold this here. There we go. That'll do. Yep, there we go. Bring the power off a little bit more. A little bit more as well. Start with the flaps out. Balloon. A bit more power off. A bit more power off again. A bit more flaps. And full flaps. Flaps 50. Approach speed is around 80 knots. We're looking, well, Pappy says we're high, but you know, it's not that sort of aircraft. So stopping performance is not going to be a problem. Okie dokie. Adding a bit more power in. Just trying to maintain that 80 knots. And when we come to a stop, we're not really going to be slamming on the brakes to try and get it off, you know, because it's a massively long runway. So I'm just going to bring the power to idle and then let it roll, basically. So this isn't a demonstration of how short it can land, but of course it can land extremely short. Starting the flare now, cutting the power. A little bit firmer, but that's okay. And we're down on the ground. And there you go, look, we're already decelerating, even with the props just coming back. And now we're going to beta, easily stopped by the end of the touchdown zone. And we more than likely would have beaten the parachutists on that, because you can see our total time for descent was absolutely minimal, you know, when you consider. So that was a really good demonstration. Let's move on. Okay, so the weather has deteriorated somewhat now, and we're going to take a look at the weather radar that's fitted in the Skyvan. Now, as you can see, it's selected off at the moment. If I simply turn the unit into standby, nothing's going to happen. Test, it's going to show the test pattern. If I turn it on, we'll be able to see the weather that's ahead of us. We can change the range to see the different range zooms of weather radar, and also we can change it to a ground map. So now we can see the sort of local terrain bit in a very basic way, as if what a weather radar would return in the map mode. And then we can simply go back to the weather radar by pressing the weather radar here. And here we have the unit back. Also has a brightness control for the unit up and down. Now, on the Skyvan, the weather radar was a real option, and it's that bump that you see on the nose. We've modelled that on all of the variants. Even if you do or do not have the weather radar, you have the unit installed, so it's ready for you to be used if you want to. It can be very helpful when you're trying to do those sort of military operations, things that this aircraft would use for in an all-weather sort of environment. Okay, so what are we looking at here? Well, this is the Surveyor variant of the Skyvan, and it answers the question, can you add more drag to an aircraft that's basically a box? The answer is, yes you can. And you can see there's these large wires attached to the end along with the big booms at the front and the back. Now, the surveying that it did is obviously up to what the company wanted and the customer specified, but some of it can be detecting magnetism, so like, you know, magnetism are changing, the Earth's magnetic north and south poles, LiDAR, general surveying, and that's what this variant has, and that's what has all these wires and equipment on the exterior. Now let's check out the interior. Alright, here's the equipment in the back of the Surveyor variant. As you can see, at this station you've got altitude, airspeed and some temperatures and some readouts on the instrumentation above. This is just for sort of, just so you can sit here and they can calibrate the instruments based on the airspeed information without having to ask the pilots. If we move further back, this station actually has a laptop and has a neat little feature built in where you can open up the interactive map, have a look around, and it's as if we were surveying things at sort of a very, very base level, and you can also close it, and you can see you've got the local time there on the bottom right. Just a nice little fun feature. Finally, before we close up on this variant, this is what it looks like from the back looking forward. As you can see, it's like the rows of seats here have been replaced with these instrumentation, and this one has all those exterior changes on as well. Okay, and this is the final version of this Skyvan. It's the military variant. Not that much change from the actual airliner version that we saw earlier. As you can see, by default it's got a darker paint scheme, which all of the military variants did come with, and it was operated by quite a few air forces throughout the world. Now let's pop inside and see the changes. On the inside you can see this is a mix between the passenger version and sort of the pure skydive cargo version of the aircraft, with some seats at the front set up slightly differently, also with some different lining on the inside, and we have medical stretchers at the rear, and we also have sort of some canvas quick seats for people to sit there to attend to people with medical wounds or whoever's getting evacuated. So you can actually you know, fly operations like this would have done from all over the world with this interior. And the rear is the same as the skydive variant with the door fully operable. And that about sums up the Skyvan. I hope you enjoyed the video today where we went through a bit of the history, learned about what an interesting aircraft this is with really unique handling characteristics that's been brought into the sim for you, and we hope you enjoy flying it yourself. Thank you very much.